My name is Lois Carrington. I'm 62 years old, and just 3 nights before Christmas, I heard something no mother should ever hear. I was folding towels in the laundry room, the dryer humming and steam curling into the air, when the slightly ajar door revealed a secret I wasn't ready for. My son Daniel, the boy I had carried through 28 hours of labor, the man I once held as my pride, lowered his voice to his wife and said, "Rebecca, the best Christmas gift would be if she just died." I froze. The red towel in my hand suddenly felt like a brick. I waited for laughter, for any sign that this was a joke. But there was none. Instead, Rebecca's voice returned, calm and casual. "You said it, not me." The silence afterward pressed down harder than the words themselves. Shaking, I went upstairs to the in-laws' suite where I was allowed to stay, the one room I had never been able to make my own, the room without locks. My knees trembled, but I forced myself onto the edge of the bed. Daniel's words echoed in my mind. My only child wished I were gone, as if my death would be a relief. For years, I had been the quiet support, the babysitter, the bill payer, the woman who had even sold her own home to help Daniel and Rebecca buy theirs. I had believed that love would be enough. That night, staring at the faded walls and the untouched suitcases in the closet, I realized love had become a one-way street. Imagine, for a moment, hearing your own child wish you away. What would you do? Would you scream? Collapse? Or would you pick up the fragments of yourself and prepare to act? I grabbed my notebook and wrote down Daniel's words, vowing I would never forget them. They would mark the beginning of my answer. I sat in that small, generous room, though it held no trace of me, no piece of my history. My chest ached, but no tears came. Instead, there was a hollow silence inside, a sharp quiet that hurt. I thought back on the years that had led to this, every sacrifice woven into the fabric of this family. When Daniel lost his job, I canceled my cruise and gave him my savings. When Rebecca wanted a bigger house, I sold the home my late husband and I had built and handed over $120,000 to make their dream real. I had convinced myself it was for my son's future, but in truth, I was erasing my own. Memories came in flashes. The late nights I rocked my grandchildren to sleep, while Rebecca took time for herself. The grocery bags I carried week after week, filling their pantry without being asked. The bills I quietly covered when they were short. I had told myself it was love, but love without gratitude slowly drains the giver dry. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed staring at the closet. Inside were suitcases untouched for 3 years, still tagged from trips never taken. The smallest one even held the label from that canceled cruise. My life had been on hold, waiting for Daniel and Rebecca to appreciate me. I leaned back against the wall, notebook in my lap, Daniel's words inked across the page. I traced them with my finger, the same way I used to trace his hairline when he was a child asleep on my chest. How could the boy who once cried for me at night now wish me gone? The silence in that room was not peace, not rest. It was the silence of invisibility, of being seen only as an obstacle. The ache could not roar. It whispered, steady and cruel, "You are not wanted here." And in that whisper, a seed of resolve began to grow. The next morning, I forced myself into routine. I folded laundry, brewed coffee, smiled faintly at my grandchildren, and nodded through Rebecca's clipped instructions about the day. Outwardly, everything looked normal, but inside, I carried those words like a secret bruise. After breakfast, I returned to the in-law suite. My hands shook as I opened the desk drawer where I kept old mail. The top envelope bore the mortgage company's logo. I tore it open carefully, hoping it was nothing. 3 months past due. The house I had sacrificed so much for, the one Daniel had promised would always be partly mine, was teetering on the edge. I opened my laptop, something I rarely did. Numbers appeared like tiny betrayals on the screen. The joint account I had set up for emergencies was nearly empty. Quiet withdrawals, week after week. Thousands gone. I had stopped checking years ago, trusting Daniel when he said it was only used sparingly. Now I saw the truth. It wasn't an emergency fund. It had become their personal allowance. I leaned back in the chair, sick to my stomach. My savings, once offered as gifts of love, had been lifelines taken without gratitude. How many times had I stocked the fridge, believing it was kindness, when it was really just covering their overspending? Voices carried from downstairs. I moved to the stairwell. Daniel's voice was low, tense. That emergency account is empty. Completely drained. Rebecca replied, casual. What about her other one? The one she uses for Christmas gifts. Daniel snapped back. I'm not robbing my mother. But there was no conviction, no outrage, just a pause, then I'll figure something out. I stepped back, hand pressed to the wall. The betrayal was no longer just whispered wishes. It was numbers on a screen, overdue bills, secret discussions about what else they could take. Back in my room, I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were documents I had nearly forgotten. The co-ownership deed, notarized agreements, letters from the lawyer my husband and I had trusted. I ran my hand over my name, still clearly printed. Daniel had promised to remove me, but he never did. I whispered in disbelief, my name is still here. Beneath the ache, something stronger stirred, proof, leverage, a reminder that I was not powerless. Not yet. That evening, after the house had quieted, I sat at my desk with the folder spread before me. The paper smelled faintly of dust, untouched for years, yet every line carried a memory. My late husband, Richard, had insisted we keep copies of everything. Lo, he'd say, trust people with your heart, not your money. At the time, I thought it cynical. Now I saw it as foresight. I pulled out an envelope labeled in Richard's handwriting. Plan B. Inside were the documents he had walked me through years ago, co-ownership deeds, letters from our lawyer, even a separate list of account numbers Richard urged me to keep hidden from Daniel. I had rolled my eyes back then, insisting family could be trusted. But tonight, staring at Daniel's casual betrayal, I felt nothing but gratitude. If you found this story moving, inspiring, or even a little shocking, make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the rest of my journey. With a steady hand, I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Hello. Sophia Miller's voice answered, instantly familiar. Relief washed over me. Sophia had been our attorney for decades, a woman who knew our history inside and out. Sophia. I whispered, my voice thin. I need to know if the paperwork we filed on the house is still valid. The one with my name on the deed. She hesitated for only a moment. Of course it is. Daniel never filed the removal. You never signed anything. You still own 40%. I closed my eyes. For the first time in days, my heartbeat began to slow. I still had rights. You do, she said softly. Tell me what happened. And I told her everything. The words I overheard, the drained bank accounts, the overdue mortgage, the pressure to hand over control of finances to Daniel. When I finished, a silence settled over the line until Sophia spoke, firm and decisive. Louis, you are not trapped. You have power here. If you want out, we can act. I don't want revenge, I whispered. I just want out, but on my terms. Then we draft a notice of intent to sell. It will hit hard. Are you ready for that? I glanced around the small room, at the faded curtains Rebecca never let me replace, at the bed where I had swallowed disappointment night after night. My hand rested on the suitcase still waiting in the closet. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Sophia promised to have the papers ready by morning. After hanging up, I opened my suitcase and began to pack. Not in a frenzy, not in fear, but with deliberate calm. I folded each sweater as if tucking away an old version of myself. Only the essentials went in: clothes, my passport, Richard's watch. On top, I placed the envelope labeled Plan B. It was more than just documents. It was proof that even after years of giving, being drained, and dismissed, I still had something that was truly mine. That night, as snow drifted against the window, I whispered into the quiet, "You wish me gone, Daniel. You'll get your wish, but not the way you imagined." The next day was Christmas Eve. The house smelled faintly of cinnamon candles and the artificial pine of the tree, but beneath the holiday cheer, cracks were forming. By mid-morning, Sophia had sent the official notice of intent to sell to both Daniel and Rebecca. It landed in their inboxes like a spark dropped into dry straw. I could almost hear the chaos ignite upstairs. By noon, the first tremor hit. Lights flickered, then went out. The television shut off mid-commercial. The dishwasher ground to silence, and the hum of the fridge faded. Daniel stormed into the kitchen, phone in hand, muttering under his breath. Rebecca followed, her voice high-pitched and urgent. "What do you mean the power's off? We have guests tonight. My mother is flying in tomorrow." Daniel's response was muffled, but I caught enough the bill hadn't been paid. He froze, glancing toward the stairs where I listened silently. Rebecca snapped. "You said she'd cover it, like always." Their voices rose and fell, each blaming the other. Downstairs, the Christmas tree stood in darkness, its ornaments glinting faintly in the dim afternoon light. Meanwhile, I packed a small tin of cookies into my suitcase. Then I thought of the children. They had done nothing to deserve this. Quietly, I wrapped 3 small gifts in plain brown paper, one for each grandchild, and wrote their names in bold marker. Inside each, I slipped a short letter. Love, memories of baking pies, bedtime stories, the way their laughter once filled my life with hope. Each letter ended the same. "None of this is your fault. Remember that." By the time I sealed the last envelope, chaos had grown louder below. Rebecca slammed cabinets. Daniel barked at the utility company over the phone. Panic was replacing denial. I sat calmly at my desk, listening to their world unravel. That evening, Rebecca stormed upstairs, perfume heavy, eyes wild, pushing into my room without knocking. "Did you cancel something?" she demanded. "The mortgage, the power. Why is everything collapsing right now?" I met her gaze steadily. "Because you built your life on a foundation I paid for. And I am done paying." Stunned into silence, she muttered and slammed the door behind her. I exhaled slowly. The fallout had begun. And while they scrambled in the dark, I felt clarity. For the first time in years, I was not the one unraveling. They were. Before dawn, the house was still dark. Snow dusted the window sills. I dressed quietly, pulled my suitcase from the closet, and set it by the door. Each fold, each item packed felt like drawing a line in fabric and resolve. I knelt and placed the 3 simple gifts beneath the tree. No ribbons, no glitter, just brown paper and words of love. It was all I could give my grandchildren, and perhaps all they truly needed. Proof that their grandmother loved them unconditionally. The airport shuttle arrived at 4 a.m. I wheeled my suitcase to the door and paused. Behind me lay years of being invisible, of waiting for gratitude that never came. Ahead was uncertainty, but for the first time, I felt steady. I stepped outside, snow crunching beneath my feet, cold biting my cheeks. As the driver loaded my bag, I glanced back at the house. Dark, silent, hollow. On the ride to the airport, I watched the world blur past. Christmas lights twinkled on neighborhood lawns, but not mine. Families laughed. My chapter in that house was closed. Hours later, on the plane to Paris, I pressed my forehead to the window. Snow-covered streets stretched below. I did not cry. I had not run away. I had not surrendered. I had walked toward myself, and that felt enough. Back in the U.S., Sophia's notice hit harder than I imagined. By the time I touched down in Paris, Daniel and Rebecca had already received confirmation of my intent to sell. Missed calls and messages stacked on my phone. Please. Anger, but I let them ring. 2 days later, I finally answered. Daniel's voice cracked. "Mom, what are you doing? You can't just—" "You got exactly what you asked for," I said calmly. I disappeared. Rebecca's sharp, panicked voice came through in the background. "Tell her we can't lose the house." "Not now." Daniel's voice tumbled out. "We're drowning. The mortgage, the bills. We can't do this without you." I tightened my grip on the phone, but spoke steadily. "You stopped treating me like family the night you wished me dead. Since then, I've been nothing but a wallet and a babysitter." "We didn't mean it like that," Daniel whispered. "Yes, you did. Maybe not in words every day, but in how you treated me. And now you'll live with it." Silence followed, broken only by his breathing. I added softly, "This house was never just yours. You forgot that, and now the papers will remind you." When I hung up, my hands shook, not with fear, but release. The reckoning had come, not with revenge, but truth. Paris in winter was cold, but the air felt lighter than it had in years. One evening, sitting in a small cafe, notebook open, I wrote slowly. I didn't just walk away. I walked toward myself. For so long, I thought love meant giving until nothing remained. I thought being a good mother meant covering debts, filling pantries, silencing my own needs. But love without respect is not love, it's servitude. Family that treats you like a burden is not family, no matter what name they carry. I closed the notebook, sipped my tea, and looked at the glowing city. I miss my grandchildren, yes, but I had left them something no darkness could take. A reminder that they were loved, and that love does not mean erasing yourself. To anyone listening, you have the right to draw a line. You have the right to keep your dignity. Sometimes the bravest act is not staying, but leaving. If this story inspired you, share it. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Stories of strength, survival, and quiet justice deserve to be heard in every corner of the world.